Hi and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. Today guys, we're going to be jumping down into the world of Bitcoin, specifically looking at the weekly close position and if there was any concerns that we should be having for the later part of today going into next week. As I get into this video, if you find it useful and informative, hit that like button. I do appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so you will not miss another video update. If you haven't yet joined us in Discord, guys, you are missing a trick. Check it out, linked in the description down below. It's a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7. It's completely free, and I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. So why not go ahead and check it out? Okay, guys, let's jump right down into this one. There's kind of a couple of things worth talking about when it comes to the weekly charts. So what we'll do is we're going to start things off with some smart money concepts here. Okay, if you're not familiar, then check out 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗔𝗥𝗘.com, linked in the description below. I did put a course together for smart money concepts that kind of walks you through some of the basics here. Now, let's just kind of talk about what's going on. The obvious thing that I've seen a lot of recently are discussions around the fair value gaps. The fair value gaps are created with imbalances in the order books. In this particular case, we have these three right here. Okay, these three fair value gaps or imbalances are created when the buying pressure is so much there and there's no sellers within this little range that the price jumps from here to here and it leaves this gap behind. This institutional candle or institutional money pushed the price up to a point where there was no one selling to them, that it has to jump up to the next place where the sellers are. Okay, so you leave these gaps behind. Now, there's gaps that get left behind all over the place on the price charts, depending on the time frames that you're on. And more often than not, the price will come back down and fill these gaps. Okay, they don't usually get left behind for a long, significant period of time. That being said, there are some exceptions. Sometimes the price gaps, these fair value gaps, do not get filled for years. Okay, but the price action does eventually move back down and fill them. Not every single time. It's not like it's a 100% must do it kind of rule, but it happens naturally. And this is because where there's no sellers here and price kind of pushes on through, this is a signal that the institutional money cannot just continue buying because they're paying more premium prices. What they need to do is they need to stop their buying pressure, let price cool off, let price gravitate back down, and then these gaps kind of get filled out quite naturally. As I said, sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes it doesn't. It really does depend on the time frame that you're on. Now, why am I talking about this on a video that's about the weekly close? Well, if I bring this up into our weekly time frame, okay, and I just zoom out of this, bearing in mind this is Bitcoin, USDT, weekly, and Binance, there is only one fair value gap on this weekly chart, and that should tell you everything that you need to know about these fair value gaps. Okay, is that they did get left behind and we have filled them quite nicely. Okay, so some clear examples of these. Let me see if I can find one that was over here. We find this one right in here. Okay, this gap was left behind up in December of 2020. We didn't fill it until over here in 2022, but we filled it nonetheless. Okay, so it got taken out of the price chart. Okay, so it took a couple of years, but we kind of get there. Now, if we were to look at a few others, we could see that there's one right here. Okay, and this was back in May of 2019, and we filled it over here in March of 2022. Okay, so you kind of see how these gaps were left behind, we came down, and eventually we filled them out. And right now, we have a gap that we've left behind most recently. Now, we don't know how long it takes to kind of play out. It will be whatever it will be, but essentially, price will eventually gravitate down, and it will fill this gap out. This particular gap on our weekly chart is 17,190 through to about 20,300. Okay, so we know that there's a gap there, and that gap has to more than likely get filled at some point in the future, which means that price action is going to be coming back down towards 17,166 at some point. Now, it doesn't necessarily tell us that we have to go down into a new lower low or anything like that, but we do see down here there's a fair amount of buyers right in that range of around 15.5 through to about 16.8. Okay, so we know that there's some buying pressure that's going to be mounting here. That's what this green block represents. This is an order block. It kind of shows you what's going on there. Now, we haven't pushed up towards equilibrium yet either, so we can look at positivity moving up towards kind of 35k at some point, and that is where that equilibrium equilibrium sits. So that's an interesting one. We've had a positive change of characteristics on the weekly chart. So again, that's another positive. Yet we'll see whether that holds, because if we do start to break on down and we have different changes of characteristics, specifically if we were to come down lower than this area here, then of course we are going to be, flipping and changing quite a bit, which if I come over to our daily chart, you can kind of see happens quite a bit. You have a change of characteristic to the downside here. It did not stick, and then we kind of rallied back up again, and we actually had a minor change of character here, and then a break of structure here, and so forth, right? So we know that those things sometimes they give you kind of false flag signals, but it is there for now, so we'll see how that one plays out in the same way that that one was over that side for change of characteristic to the downside. So on this weekly chart, we do have this this kind of imbalance in the order book on the weekly that probably has to we have to come down and kind of fill it up, right? So this is an area that we want to be thinking about moving back down to at some point in the future, in the same way that we had to push back up to fill this gap that was left behind right in here, right? We can kind of see it right there. That gap there got filled with, unfortunately, another one. We can argue that this is institutional money that basically pushed price down and then bought up and push price back up again, kind of straight down, straight up kind of situation. So anyway, that's the Smart Money Concepts weekly, right? So we can see that we have got this gap down here. Now, I wanted to start with the Smart Money Concepts to kind of show you that these gaps get filled out. Can take a while though, but they do get filled out, and that we have this fair value gap, this imbalance in the weekly chart for BTC USDT pair. Now, as I come over into that same pair, but this time we reflect on EMAs, we can see that we closed last week above the 200 EMA, but below the 50 EMA. That's the red line. Okay, and this week we're looking to close below the 200 EMA, basically telling us that last week was a false flag. Okay, so essentially, if you were to be bullish on the market, you want to be above the 200 weekly EMA. Okay, that's kind of like your trend filter. If you're trending upwards in your bull market, you're going to be trading above the 200 EMA, and if you're in a bear market, you're going to be trading below the 200 EMA. Now, over this side, you can see that in August of 2022, we got rejected from this EMA. Over here in January, we got rejected from it. Last week, we obviously pushed up higher, and now we're looking at coming back down. The question is, are we going to close below this EMA? On Binance Bitcoin USDT, this comes in at $23,685. But if we go ahead and take a look at it on this chart, this is Bitcoin USD weekly Bitstamp. You can actually see slightly different variables. This is EMA is actually $24,983, and it is our resistance right here. You can see that we didn't close above this 200 EMA, okay, on the USD pair, and this basically tells us that it is acting as resistance. So we can see it quite clearly there, acting as resistance, and is basically pushing us down. And closing above this level today, I think, is highly unlikely. So my expectation is on this chart we stay below that 200 EMA. Now we can see that this is a huge area of resistance. This was the resistance all the way from back in July of 2022. And obviously is resistance where we are right now. Not only is this resistance range between 24,281 and 25,336 USD on the USD chart, on our chart for USDT and Binance, we also have a very similar range, which we can draw in here as well. The numbers are slightly different, but essentially it's 24,267 to 25,261. But you can see how all that resistance up here, this essentially is where supply is entering into the marketplace. Okay, so this is basically a supply zone. This is where sellers basically are looking at selling BTC. Now, it's no coincidence that this is also going to be, if I come up to my daily chart here, the premium range for Bitcoin on the USDT as well, right? We can see that this is where the sellers are, and this is the premium range. Premium range basically is saying that you're paying a premium price for BTC at this point. So up in this range just here, this is essentially where the sellers are, and that is why you're seeing this consolidation right inside this range over here, but also this consolidation range over here as well. Okay, so it's not a coincidence that this is the premium pricing range where a lot of people are offloading their BTC. This is where the suppliers are entering into the ecosystem, and unfortunately it's only retail investors that are then jumping in thinking that they're going to the moon, basically buying the Bitcoin at a more expensive rate from those people who were riding it up, or more specifically, that maybe even created the move to the upside through Forex trading and all that kind of good stuff. So from our charts here, we can quite clearly see that we have some targets to be thinking about. We want to stay below 23,685 USDT. We want to probably stay below the level of 24,984 USD if we want to be bearish. And if we want to be bullish, well, we need to close above those levels for next week to kind of give us an idea as to kind of where things are going to go. Now, from our stochastic RSI, our oscillator, we're heavily overbought on the weekly. This has been the case for a few weeks now, and expectations will be that we will eventually start to move to the downside, and we'll have to see that fair value gap, in my opinion, start to get filled out. So the expectation is to drop down lower than $20,000, as unpopular an opinion as that is. It is unfortunately the most likely and most probable scenario, considering how overbought we are on these macro levels, considering that we have this fair value gap, this imbalance in the order books presented here on our weekly chart. The fact that we are closing below the EMA on the USDT, at least it looks like we're likely to close below on the USDT, and very, very likely to close below that on the Bitcoin USD pair as well on that 200 EMA. We had the death cross on the simple moving averages as well on our weekly. Let me go ahead and remove those, and actually, no, let me remove this one and bring those on. Right there, you can see the death cross that happened. So we have the death cross on the weekly as well. We have the EMAs, we have the imbalance in the order. To me, it just doesn't come across very bullish right now. Not only are volumes half of what they were back in 2019's beginning of the bull market, as to what we have going on right now, not only do we see constant selling pressure from institutional level money, such as the whales with over 1,000 Bitcoin or 10,000 Bitcoin per wallet. We see continuation of decreases with those positions and only increasing with retail size wallets. This market, to me, looks incredibly fragile and on the cusp of a bit of a move to the downside. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. I'm going to leave this video right there. If you found it useful and informative, smash that like button. I do appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With all that said, done and out of the way, guys, I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.